And when we got four, that's when we got more.
Okay, that's fine. Good morning, and it's 9 o'clock, and we'll call this meeting to order. Has the meeting been properly noticed?
Yes.
Are there any comments, correspondence, or communication? Hearing none, I'm done to approval of minutes. January. Move that.
I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Ross, second by Supervisor George. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Universe extension. Yeah, you are.
Thank you. Okay, good news. Development educator, and she is amazing. Been the executive director for United Way in Green Bay. She has a ton of nonprofit. Her degree is in nonprofit leadership, so we're excited. So she's moving down to Washington County. She'll start on March 6th. Her name is Tanya Spofford. Spofford. S-P-O-F-F-O-R-D. I know how to spell it, but not say it. So we're pretty excited.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we'll get the word out, and I'm sure she'll hit the ground running. She's already asked a lot of good questions even before she started. Yeah, really.
So 4-H, it's always busy. We're doing stuff actively all the time. Just this week, we finished our 3rd annual leader training, and annual leader training is a requirement of the chartering process. So we really focus on sharing information on the Thrive survey that goes out every fall. When youth enroll that are age 12 and older, they fill out a survey. And the survey is part of a longitudinal study that we're doing. So Mary Arnold from Oregon State, she developed this survey, and it's really to show that 4-H helps our youth thrive. So it's a longitudinal study that will add to the data and support that 4-H is helping youth thrive. So it's exciting that this is happening, and it's a study that really needs to be done to give us hard data that we can share. So that's something they do every fall, and is to inform our leaders on that. And then also what is the 4-H thriving model. So this is the first driving model. I told you to see that release. Here it is again. So in soil, this is where 4-H is. We are the developmental parent. So we have the sparks of belonging and relationships and engagement. Part of the training was really focusing on sparks, which is on that survey that I just talked about. That was one area. This is the state. This is us. Sparks are right here. This blue line means it's a little lower. Oh, that becoming doing great in 4-H. I mean, we're above 4 is average, right? Everything we have is over 5. 7's the top. But Sparks is still a little bit lower, and there's always opportunity for growth. So focusing on the Sparks and what are Sparks, really using that language. Sparks are the thing that get you out of bed, or what you're excited about, what you want to do. But have you asked the youth what they're excited about, what gets them out of it? It might be, you may think because they have a skill or talent, that's their spark. It might not be their spark, they're just good at it. So really finding out what gets them excited. It could be volunteering in the community, giving to others, taking care of others. So really helping the volunteers have questions they can ask, open-ended questions, and really help you discover their sparks and learn that language because it's part of that survey. So having that language and kind of spreading that out helps with the survey, and I feel it will increase our spark in the survey going forward. So we worked on that. That was, and actually their responses were amazing, what they took away, what they learned, and we filled out a post-it note and shared one thing that they learned, and they all learned something about sparks and how to ask the questions and the information. There's a TED Talk out there on it too, if you're interested. Peter Benson, do that TED Talk, and you can learn more about sparks and thriving for you. That was also part of the training that we had. In addition to that, the next night we had, which was last night, we had an ongoing camp meeting. We've been meeting for several months now, getting our planning going, and we're going to kick off registration for our adventure camp, which is for the older youth, on Wednesday the 8th at 8 a.m. Super exciting. We're doing kayaking in the caves up in the county. We're going to go to the escape room. We're tenting at Greenbush Park, doing some outdoor things there, learning outdoor survival skills, things like that. So a very active summer. If you know anyone, right now we're opening it to 4-H. So 4-H, if we don't hit our capacity with the 4-H youth, then we'll open it to the public. But our cap on the adventure camp is 20, much higher on our base camp for the younger youth. But with the adventure camp, taking 20 youth, kind of being tempting, like that's a big number already, right? It's a big level. So we're super excited about that. That's coming up. And then tonight, we have our Youth Advisory Council. We just started that this year. We have 9 members, representatives from multiple clubs, and they are helping us determine what the needs are in our county employees, what's going well and areas of growth. And so they are working right now on a document that they're going to share with all of the leaders on things that can do to increase participation in the program. So many things going on. I can go on and on, but those are like the top 3 I'm going to share because they happened just this week and are ongoing. Obviously, if you have any questions about 4-H or what's going on, reach out.
Not correctly on 4-H, but there was a survey around, I think, just on the extension. I'm sorry, I didn't use the word sparks in responding to that survey, but I just was curious about and use.
You mean a strategic plan question?
Maybe that was it.
They're just collecting data right now, and hopefully the strategic plan will set goals based on what we hear. What I've seen with the survey, I know Rob sat down with me and we went through it. There's really some of the things like, what could the extension be better? What do you see pitfalls maybe in the future? So what most people said is somebody's going to be an issue in the future. And also one thing that to really look at improving is our marketing. We probably don't market as well, so even though we try like crazy, but we tend to be the best kept secret in the counties all the time. So those are some of the things I'm glad we're doing this because we as educators and area directors say this all the time. I guess we're going to do a survey, maybe medicine, listen. So we've been doing surveys with the staff as well as our partners. So that was completed, yesterday was the last day. They had to upload all our documents and then hopefully they'll let us know and we'll share.
I couldn't get my notes. That's my wonderful system, right?
Really? What did you get sent? Because I
Came with it. I assume all supervisors got it, or at least this committee did.
But you also handed.
He handed it off,
yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
but it was kind of confusing. What
The
was-
questions were not ideal.
No, it would have been better on multiple choice.
Yeah. Well, I'll share whatever you tell me, and regardless if it's a survey or not, I can share. I create a monthly report what's going on in the counties that goes to the team, like what's going on, what changes.
Yeah, I mean, when I took over it, you hit the nail on the head in your presentation just now. I mean, I think you guys are one of the best kept secrets. So I think just if I'm ordered to fill out that, final that is just how do we get you guys
More visible.
Yeah, so and it was very low, but there's my
Yeah.
so thank you. for saying that.
Yeah, marketing and then funding is always going to be a challenge. It's on both, and how do we work, collectively, partners here. What problems are we going to have together, and really it's funding. If you're going to have to look at funding, just like we look at how we fund us too. And growth is, looking at revenue generating, down the road, which our community development educator could do as one of the positions that can do work with for-profit groups to do strategic planning. We don't do that with them now, obviously, but my other community development educators from the other county, they do some revenue generating around real colors. Remember we talked about the real colors, like you got some of the departments did it, and organizations pay for that. So our educators to get checks, revenue, community development is really. It doesn't make a lot, but
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Next up, we have years extension. All right, next, register deeds, one information. Yeah. Land and water management. We have an action item. You guys want to talk about action item? The action item, ordinance, amendment section 9.024, 7, sanitary permit fees. Call for the hearing quickly. So we have some questions as far as this point of cost.
Yeah. So as we revisit the sanitation proposed fee changes, can I have you guys flip to page 22 in your packet? And then while you guys do that, I just want to reiterate some points with these fees. So these are a one-time fee for each system. New home replacement, it's a one-time fee for the life of that system. So we aren't imposing more revenue on this fee. If your system lasts for 30 years, that's awesome. You don't gain anything else, no more revenue other than just one. However, in the lifetime of that system, we do have expenses on that system. Every 3 years, we send out maintenance reminders at our cost. We don't put that out on landowner at all. So that's one point I wanted to make. Also, looking back at our 10-year history of our financial reports, the sanitation department broken down into sanitation is at a 7% loss in revenue. That's not the point I want to make, but the expenses on average is an 18% increase. So what goes into our expenses? Obviously, employees are number one always, wage, salary, benefits. But then the training that goes along with them and keeping their licenses and keeping them up to date on new system requirements, state mandates per these systems, that sort of thing. Other things that have increased are supplies, travel, training, and purchase services, and the interdepartment charges. So everything that makes our system work in our office has increased over time. And these fees are the only thing that haven't. So then getting to page 22 in your packet, I just want to bring attention to the question that was asked of us last time was, what is our department cost per permit? And then what is the fee that we collect per permit? So based on the given year, our department cost per permit and then fees collected per that permit. So as you can see, our department costs outweigh the revenue collected.
This is exactly what we
Yeah, we were just basically asking what your costs are, because we didn't really have them last time.
Yeah.
So I mean, on the average, $1,000, what you want to increase it to? I mean, you're going out how many times, how much paperwork you're doing, et cetera, that's your cost out of that, that's what you're coming up with.
Correct.
And if it's a building clear down that you don't have as many systems, then actually your costs come up higher, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's all based on an average number of permits, which was 129 per average. From a mount system to a holding tank. So it all depends on the year, what we're gonna face this year.
And I think you told me that these haven't been increased in 18 years.
18 years.
So that's a big jump. But,
Yeah.
But it's making up.
Yeah, when you do the math and see 30-some%, and then you have to vote on it, you need to have an explanation to
I agree.
whoever your, contacts you,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
understand that point.
I did look into all the numbers that honestly, I think it represents a failure of our department not to address fees on a recurrent basis. Because had we looked at this 20 years ago, if we would have just raised fees by an average of 1%, we wouldn't be before you today. And even, 10 years would have been 3% cost of one.
Yeah, well, that actually leads into my next question is, what is, with this increase, is there any sort of escalator in there, built-in escalator that you want us to put in? Or is, so that they're not coming to us again? Because I don't want to have the same problem 15 years.
I believe because our fee schedule is in ordinance, we've got to do this to amend the ordinance. A lot of other departments have taken their fee schedules out of ordinance and then left it at committee. But because it was structured as part of the written ordinance, that's why we're reporting.
Appreciate it.
So basically, we can visit this every year.
We would, anytime we want to make an increase, we have to come forward with it.
Right.
Well, we would either way discussion, but, and until a time comes in which we revisit the entire ordinance, then we could take the fees out of the ordinance and make it, I guess, something that's, recognized by you guys and adjusted.
I like the idea about looking at this.
Usually these municipalities set up some sort of like a 2-year or 3-year review, and their policy would be to review these every so many years. Because you have that fluctuation of maybe one being a high year, one being a low and that. So every year, I'm not trying to create them like work, you know what I mean? But if you have it in your plan of how you operate your department, that you're gonna review those fee schedules every 2 years or 3 years, maybe even. And now the way society is running and what's happening, I mean, it's just rampant as far as costs and increases and things like that. So that's also another thing that's driving this whole thing. Maybe years ago, things stayed the same for quite some time. And maybe you could get by, but now you're gonna have to probably be on top of it at least 3 years, if not sooner.
Yeah, I mean,
If this is gonna continue with prices changing the way they are and the wages, I can see that's your driving, the main thing is the wage factor. So, it's a
Well-
good thing to have that in mind.
yeah, well, and all along, this just proves it, this is what we just needed, the documentation. We kind of knew it last month, we heard it last month, we kind of needed it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're still subsidizing.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make, this is not a revenue generator for the county and your department.
No, and it never.
Would you, that's exactly, but I just want that to go on record, that we're not trying to turn this into a revenue source, but at the end of the day, we do need to kind of cover, at least put a dent a little.
Like about number of them is a huge factor in this. So whether it's construction or, old systems that are being replaced.
Yes, I took Kurt's thing as, his wanting to find out more about the cost of the fairness to the people that take up the permits as far as the cost. But I also want to balance that with the fairness to the taxpayers, so I don't think the taxpayers should be subsidizing everything.
Correct.
It's the cost of like a house, right? I mean, you're gonna spend $200 to $1 million on a new house, and it's gonna cost you $1,000 or a couple months for this.
And to Mark's point, I mean, just the cost of doing business is increasing. Put it at 7 change, you're buying milk. I mean, the cost of everything's going
Just
up.
within the last 2 years, which we've seen here, we just did our rate schedule the last meeting. And this is a point that there's a definite change here, so maybe things stayed the same for a long time, but they obviously changed drastically recently. And where we're headed, it's just more or less a flag to say, look at this every so often.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question, is there some sort of like, could we talk about some sort of gradual, so we don't have, I don't want this to be fixed for the next 15 years, but I don't need to create more work for you coming every year, trying to justify either.
Well, they would have their data, so I don't know if it would be that hard for them to report it annually.
And they could make a recommendation to this committee that this year, I think we need to change, and we don't, let it be the same. We don't have to raise the fees every year.
No, yeah,
I'll just give you an update of where we've been for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Right?
in all fairness,
Next time we come in.
both the permit taker and the taxpayers are subsidizing.
What is the value of having this in an ordinance? Are other fee structures, fees?
I worked in this in many municipalities, some have it in ordinance and some have it in resolution. Resolution is easier to change up there, fee schedule. In ordinance, you run into law, what publications and all things and all notifications and all this stuff. So many municipalities have taken it out of ordinance and did it as a resolution. Resolutions usually, are money type things, but the old way was ordinance. There's no way around that. Way back.
The
This
first,
is the
the first reading, you know, to change.
And it worked back then, and things didn't change quite as quickly as what they do now with technology and everything else.
Yeah, turn the pace of government came from.
Ordinance-based fees give more control to the overall county board.
Right.
Because obviously they still have to approve.
Right.
and go forward.
Exactly.
So, rather than just the members of one committee affording the entire county board to,
But you could send a resolution to county board too, if you wanted. I don't know if that would be open. It might be depending on the order.
I don't know if I can do this, but based on what I'm hearing, does it make sense for us to take out an ordinance? Put that workload on you to develop the resolution that takes it out of ordinance and makes it a resolution. Just seems to me to lock in price into ordinance that is going to change on a regular basis as the pace of government, it'll be built into the process. It seems ridiculous.
I mean, is it any different work from year to year? I mean, if they come and revisit it every year, it's basically the same, isn't it?
Not if you have to change an ordinance. I mean, yeah.
Changing an ordinance is much more work than changing the
Yeah,
resolution.
and from what I'm hearing, this sound, I don't think the county board is meant to micromanage. I think the county board is to hire great people and let them do their job, not micromanage them. So I think having the ordinance structure is more about micromanage, if you ask me.
So maybe rather than have a motion now to direct the landlord department to come back with a proposal, just come back with a proposal and say what makes sense from your perspective. Does it make sense to take out an ordinance and put it into a resolution based and what would the process be for approval of that? At minimum, we have to come back. And we could still, we could talk about, does it need to go to the county board and the legal counsel should review it next year.
Sure. Let me ask one question here before we kick this can down to another month. I get the pace of government.
That's not what I said, to be clear, that's not what.
No,
Let's do this.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Can we do this and?
Yes.
That's right, okay.
So basically,
Thank
they
you.
could work on that.
I heard that.
and bring it to our-
Do this and then change the process.
in all honesty, if we're gonna write out the ordinance again, there's a lot of changes that should be made to update over time that haven't.
Well, that's something we should look at.
So, if we're gonna open the ordinance, I think we should go through the entire thing, make any necessary changes and do the resolution.
Then now would be the time to do that.
You have a year to do that, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it'll take a long.
But then also makes you guys more efficient
Yeah.
and up to date. I mean, we adjust.
And all this information comes to you guys anyway for approval, so it would be similar, just not that in depth.
So I'm looking for.
I would make the motion to accept the price changes.
I'll second.
A motion by Supervisor Ross, second by Supervisor Sarah. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And then I would ask that you guys in the next coming months, take a look at that and preferably not waiting here. So that if there is, since we are looking at possible multiple changes to the ordinance, if there are revisions or questions, then I don't want this to be like the 11th hour, we need to pass this ordinance. Put it in effect next month, you know, so if you can have that to us sometime in the summer. It'd be much easier to, if there is some back and forth, we have that time. Hopefully there's not, but just to give us that time.
And we just have shorter review.
Yeah.
So before we can go back for motion.
Sure.
All right.
So this is a big vote of confidence. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have a carryover, this is from the revised agenda. Yeah, Carry over 2022. Funds, $26,841.
I would make the motion to authorize the carryover.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Ross, second by Supervisor Chestnut. Comments? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, then we have. It's all management, financial information, report, line water management.
Yeah, I guess my first year end is through. I guess if you have any in-depth specific questions, I can touch on that. Otherwise, blanket overall, we're still waiting on our reimbursements from 2022 for a lot of the Clean Farm Family grants. We have been reimbursed in full from Fund for Lake Michigan at $50,000. But how the Clean Farm Family grants operate, they're all reimbursable basis. So all those reports are in, we're still waiting 22 money in 2023.
Questions?
What's the total of that? No,
The Clean Farm Family grants total over $141,500,
And you're actually,
including county,
right, for this next year, you actually got a larger one.
152 and change, yes. Yeah, and then in our monthly newsletter, I just wanted to touch on our wildlife damage and abatement program. A lot of the local butcher shops are now not wanting to participate because they have no help. So if you donate a deer for this program, it has to be a whole deer. You know, quartered, it can be gut, but it can't be quartered or clean. Well, they don't have staff to take care of that for the cost that it takes on them versus the reimbursement that we give them through this program. So Blouse and Sockville was the only one who participated last year. And he was mentioning the fact that his short staff, and he might not be interested this year. So that's what we're facing on this one. They don't allow, they don't allow local producers to do it in their garage to do this sort of thing. It has to be a licensed shop. So, so that program's up in the air.
So if that program were to go in today, what would the impact?
I think it's fairly minimal. It doesn't bring in a lot of money. Really, it doesn't. It was, I think, 11 deer last year total.
Oh.
So it's
I'm just thinking.
It's
I
been
hear
slowly
deer in the
dwindling.
sign,
So that's basically when they donate them to the food pantry.
yes, yeah. The numbers have been slowly dwindling over the last couple
Well,
of
your
years.
cautious, so with tags.
Right, and most butcher shops can't put it on the floor with other products, so it kind of hinders them. It's very costly for them.
So just wanted to give you that update on that end. The next update is our February 9th soil health event that you guys are all invited to. Just let me know when I can get a head count for lunch. We have Dave Brandt coming, who is a cover crop aficionado on his own farm. I did meet him at the no-till conference back in January and look forward to having him. He's gonna be a farmer that talks farming. He's not so much a presenter, not great at public speaking, but he's great at talking about what he does to other people who do what he does.
What region is he from? Where is he from?
I believe he's from Northwest Iowa. So I went to the no-till conference in search of someone from Wisconsin. There's a lot of feedback that I've been getting, even before I started at this job, was all these speakers who come to this event aren't even from Wisconsin. They don't farm our soils, they don't farm next to the lake. How can you compare apples to oranges, is what I've gotten feedback from. We have one suggestion of a farmer out of Canada, who's a little closer to our hardiness zone. So I will approach him to be a potential speaker for next year's event. Otherwise, I'm kind of running empty on speakers to promote what we do on soils like ours.
Basically, what I got out of past ones that I've gone to is you can take what they do and you can think about it, if you can use a portion of it. Some of it works on some locations and some you might just forget.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you see the point that we're not in our region. It's very tough next to the lake and in clay soils.
I can agree with you, and our demonstration plot on 57 would agree with you too.
Yeah, no, I know, I've always told Andy, it doesn't look good, you know, a lot of times, so it's like, why would I wanna do that?
You have to give and take. Out of the 5 years of the plots, a couple years have been very bad, a couple years have been very good. But we're at a net balance on our conventional farm versus no-till farm. Net balance for income, not so much yield, because it's based on income. So you have your moments.
I think Mark and Don will do
I sent my head on this.
I think I got you, yep.
We'd like to attend, but actually got
It just shows our good support from this committee. That,
Yeah.
you know, we three went last year, and I mean, the people that were there from not only Ozaukee County, all over, I mean, this is, that, your perspective, if you were just doing this for Ozaukee County, that's not what it is. And it's everybody working together from all the other areas. There's an article I mentioned.
Eyes have been wide open since they joined this committee.
We all get this, and there's an article in there, and it talks about Washington County, what they're doing. So, you know, that's our neighbors, so we, you know, we have to keep going here to be supportive of all of this. And we have a very diverse county as far as soil, everything along the lake.
Right, but I've got a feeling if the grants went away, I don't think you have as much participation.
Correct.
Because because you're talking anywhere from 30 to 60 bushels on a cornfield difference. Usually, you know.
And the plot that we have, comparison to the area along the lake, that's.
Right, you know, so it's been, I mean, no-till and whatever, that has been around forever. My dad was probably one of the first ones in Ozaukee County. He had the first no-till corn planter, and he hired out, and then it never cash flowed out.
Year to year, it will be tough, but I can say based on our history at the plots, we are at a net even for practices. So,
But your seed breeders have come up to play, whereas back in the 70s, they weren't thinking that route. So I mean, things have changed in that respect.
It's just not yield either, it's the cost of the gasoline and everything else.
yeah, if you look at
Save
yields,
money.
you're gonna lose. But if you look at your inputs, and the fuel savings, the tractor at the time, you come out at a net even over the 5 years. So given year, no-till is gonna do worse than the conventional if it's severely wet or dry. But over the average of 5, we are at a net even. So now our fun job is to improve that soil health in the no-till is more of a benefit than that net even. So convincing someone, if I can get even, what more benefit am I gonna get with the soil health? So now I have to, my job is to promote the benefits of the soil health that doesn't equate to a dollar value.
How many people signed up for this?
We have 77 on the list right now.
I think this is a one, I like going to it. Sometimes they start talking shop.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't speak farm, you know, so it kind of goes over my head, but it's very.
We'll put on the no-till end if you don't promote waterways and sodding in those areas where water runs.
Yeah.
You'll be behind.
Yeah, part of that MDD carryover that you guys approved is for funding for concentrated flow channel waterways, critical areas meetings, so. That's one topic Jeff is gonna tackle this year.
Because I've custom harvested in no-till ground and almost lost combine 2 trucks. And that isn't beneficial.
I was out, we had a wild meeting before Christmas, 5 corners, and I was 60 and high. And the big fields that are all plowed, actually plowed, the ditches were full of black snow. Behind the snow fences, it was covered with black snow, so you know how much it blew, because that was a real cold frost off there, and then high wind, it was all over the place, it was on the road, it was everywhere, that was the soil, because it didn't have a cover crop.
If you talk to Tom Richard, he has some photographs of
Yeah, she did stop by and get me those photos, so I'm bringing them to the our family group.
So, I mean, maybe because I'm on this board and the way I think, I notice these things, maybe other people don't, but I'm going like, oh goodness, half the field is here, you know?
Right, but if you go around in the spring and you witness no-till fields that didn't have proper waterways established, you see a lot of damage and soil loss,
Sure.
sometimes even more.
You see the brown water going down
Yes, so I mean, that's, if you're gonna address this, then you gotta address the whole, you know, what we're not doing is we're not contour stripping anymore. Our large farms turning, you know, 40-acre fields into 40-acre fields instead of splitting them up.
I'm gonna have this conversation. Because
I don't know.
we were,
Sure.
this is just talking about.
We have to remember that this is voluntary. For all the farmers.
Right.
That's the big aspect that she's doing. No matter what we say, it's voluntary. And they're looking at the bottom line, which you can't fund, right? Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you guys, appreciate it. Yes, sounds good.
Any members of the planning? Action, item 1, increase of revenue budget amendment to the U.S. Forest Service Lakes Restoration Initiative. Cooperative Regional Management Areas Grant to the Focus and Advancement of Basis Species Program Incorporated. Uinta Creek Partnership Incorporated for the Invasive Species Management in Uinta Creek Nature Preserve. Read the title long slide for the things set up.
I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Ross, second by Supervisor Jones. Any other comments?
I wasn't trying to cut off his explanation or if any questions, but just to get it on my plate.
We've got the documentation. And all these, we just put back.
Exactly.
But that's what's necessary.
Right.
It's a read, read.
Well, you have to learn
This is a
to
good, this is a good, good.
Yes, yes.
Any other comments, questions? Not, on the call question, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, submittal and acceptance of a natural fish and wildlife foundation to sustain our Great Lakes grant, groundwater investigation and stormwater wetland improvements.
I can give a brief overview. As you recall, we have submitted and received another grant for this work. So this is kind of, if you will, a second phase of that funding. We're proposing to submit a $200,000 grant. Our match would be coming from 2 private foundation grants and, well, actually 3 private foundation grants. A large one that's coming with the Fund for the Machine, which we've got very positive feedback about. We do expect them to be awarding. I think their quarterly meeting is in March, so they had to push our original. We applied last year. At some point, they had to push our original request back in their quarterly reviews. But this would help us with the engineer design construction of the stormwater wetland that we started at Vermont. This is an area that's been a little problematic, and we continue to hear from the neighbors, and so we are trying to keep this moving forward.
So this will essentially pond it up before it gets to the neighbor's yard or create a wetland that will retain the water.
Like finding out.
Well, it's ponding up now. So, yeah, no, this is a very good question. So if you look at the design sketch, it gives you a little indication. Basically what's happened historically, if you look at the design sketch, the hatched green areas are the existing wetlands and also the drainage. You can see it basically that wetland stops at the property line, and that's a function of development really. And so it's cut off a natural flow that would have gone, which is off the map there, but would have gone to the north and into the natural ravine that runs down to the lake. So what we're proposing to do, for a number of reasons, is capture that water where that wetland dead ends at the north end of the property, move it to the west, away from the bluff, which provides some benefits to bluff stability. But yes, then pond it up or put it into a large wetland area, and then we can meter the exit. And by that, I mean, we can control the outflow so that in a big storm event, we're gonna, if you will, pond up more water in that wetland and have a slow release as opposed to a rapid release that can cause some ravine erosion, et cetera. And likewise, we're also moving that drainage away from the bluff, which is generally a good thing. We are gonna be holding obviously more water under certain circumstances, and that is part of the intent, is that we'll be able to hold it on the Vermont property and then slowly release it. And so that natural path again, which is not shown on the map, but to the north goes into the natural ravine that goes down to the Michigan. Just a real quick recap. This was tried prior to my time. There was an attempt to resolve this by doing a directional bore, taking that drainage from the wetland and emptying the lake. Worked well for a couple of years. The problem is the bluff shifted, that pipe basically separated, cracked. It was a fairly costly endeavor, which the neighbor participated in to the north. And so, repeating that doesn't seem like a long-term sustainable scenario. So that's why we're kind of moving to this. And then lastly, I'll mention where we have that stormwater wetland is, I think it works really well with our master plan for the park. It's, if you will, not a heavily used area, it's wet already, and would provide some habitat benefits as well. So we like the solution. This came out of our groundwater and surface water study for the whole park that was funded on that fiscal program. So that's what you're seeing as the conceptual plans. We have to take this to final design. So
It's a little unclear to me, what gets metered out in the air. So there's an arrow pointing out of that, pointing to the north of that development.
yeah, that's actually, there's a culvert there that goes underneath that road, and then it goes into the ditch line of the ravine, basically. So that's a current drainage way. And so that's where the exit would be. That's a current, there's an existing culvert under the road to the north, and then there's the existing ditch and ravine. And so,
Is the capacity of that, it was shifting, I'm just trying to.
that's why we designed the outflow capacity to the receiving ditch. Yep, so if we need to pond up more for a long time, basically by setting the elevation, we can control the point at which that releases and also under which, under what velocities. So that's what needs to do, occur during the final engineering design. But it is already a receiving drainage area, and historically that was a receiving drainage for this water. So we're kind of restoring it to where it was. Right now, it's ponding basically against the property line, and essentially because one of the neighbor's houses is right on the property line, it's ponding against this foundation. In a pretty significant way. We've had times even in winter when it's 4 feet deep there. So it's a pretty significant drainage way. And we're hoping to move it. And again, by moving it to the west, also there are no structures there, and that is where the drainage culvert is that goes under the road. One last thing, just if it wasn't clear, how do we get the water to the wetland? That actually, we use the existing sump crack that was done for the directional bore. We use that existing sump crack, but then we pipe it out. So it'll be, if you will, it'll be somewhat of a mimicking of groundwater fed wetland, because it's going to come into the base of the wetland. The elevation will come in low, and it'll basically bubble up, if you will, fill up the wetland, and then out. So there's a lot more engineering design to be done, but we are basically mimicking what historically used to be the case. And we're not adding, by the way, we're not adding any water. In fact, if anything, everything that we've done at Vermont has been minimizing the damaging stormwater from prairie plantings to, all the tree plantings and things that we're doing. We haven't put in any new impervious surface since we've owned developed the park. So this water is not, a function of what's happening at Vermont. It's a function of what's happening around Vermont.
So basically, you're slowing it down, so it's not gonna, you're not enlarging the culvert. That's-
Yeah, we're slowing it down, and we may end up having to enlarge that culvert, but I don't think so. We actually want that culvert to be somewhat of a restrictor for the outfall. Because we're not gonna affect anybody by restricting it and keeping it on
Right.
our property. So we can kind of use that culvert as a restrictor. I'm not gonna rule out the fact, because I didn't get it done final engineering design, I won't rule out the fact that we might need to enlarge that culvert, but I'm gonna wait and see what we get for the time of fidelity. But the intent is really to match what's there in the release point. And we have, that's about an acre and a half there. So we have a good amount of room, and it may or may not be clear on the air photo, but there's a trail there. It actually is acting, it was filled at one point in a trail / road. It's a berm on the south side there. So that also, is actually a nice future, because we can continue in that, if you will.
Okay. So, motion. Motion by Supervisor Terry, seconded by Supervisor Ross. Favor say aye.
Right.
Motion carries. Number 3, submittal and acceptance of the National Fishing Wildlife Foundation Sustained Athletics Grant for basic education.
Yeah, this is, so we are currently operating under, the same grant. They put out another RFP essentially, and, it's really targeted at, in fact, it says right in the RFP that they're actually targeting, projects that they funded in the previous round, because what they really want is follow-up. And they want to, make some progress there. So I think we have a very good opportunity here, and we're currently doing the same thing. So this is a little bit of a replication of what we've been working on, the last 3 years. The only thing that has changed about the proposal is that they're now requesting a minimum $200,000 request. So our existing grant that we're operating here was $150,000. They moved the minimum up, which for us is not a bad thing. In the sense that while they're hoping for a 1-to-1 match, it's not a requirement. And so you'll see our match on this. A lot of it is coming from our in-kind staff time and equipment and things like that, but also a little bit in the way of private foundation money, which we've been very successful in receiving in the past. So we're pretty confident that is pending. But this has been a huge benefit to the parks overall for the last 3 years, and they have a pretty good shot at this one, given that they're targeting previously funded projects. And last word on this, prior to applying to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant that we currently have, we had a very similar EPA grant. So this is actually their third large grant, and we'll be in 6 or 7 years now with the work. So it's making a difference.
Due to the capacity concerns in terms of being able to develop these, spend this money with the resources that we have as a match.
Yeah.
The other projects we've been talking about.
Yeah, not so much on this one. Like I said, we're currently managing it, so this would be future work, and I don't see it changing from our existing staff side. But a big portion of the grant is to get contractual health and conservation course. So that's really how we make this happen, is the grant helps us fund contractual work. So it's a matter of managing, supervising, educating, but I don't see that workload changing from what we're doing.
I would make the recommendation.
Motion by Supervisor Ross, seconded by Supervisor Chestnut. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
4, submittal and acceptance of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Fish and Wildlife Benefit Assistance Grant for acquiring and restoring portions of parcel IDs 19050506003 And 1105005040. 110500510001. 110500502000. Now, county election value. Soccer, floodplain and wetland restoration. For, is it simple ordinance?
Statutes, state statute, yeah.
59.27678 and 7.06571 Wisconsin statutes as part of county highway fund that for reconstruction and restoration.
Yeah, that one's an awful, the statutory references there are the authorities given for the acquisitions. So as you know, we've actually applied and received, some DNR, funding, and as part of that, grant, we had talked about a East Fish and Wildlife, proposal as well. We've actually been working on this Fish and Wildlife proposal for a little over a year now. And so this is an invite only, we're the only invite to the grant proposal. And it's just the way this grant works. So I have a high level of confidence in funding. It's not guaranteed, and so this helps us put together that full proposal for review. Our proposal originally was through, the infrastructure bill, but that's not how it's ultimately going to be funded. It actually, they changed the funding source, and it's actually being funded through the GRI funding. So the grant is for $975,000. This is to include, and actually one of the priorities is for the restoration of the work. Obviously, we need to work through the acquisition pieces first, before to do this. The match requirement that is being listed for the grant is the Wisconsin DOT LRIP local road improvement program funds that highway department received for working in county highway and making those improvements. And then, like I said, we had applied and accepted for just acquisition work, the DNR grant already. And again, this would be obviously pending acquisition work on a willing seller, willing buyer scenario. But this would help us with the overall project for the restoration of the reconstruction of county highway government, and the adjacent restoration of the floodplain for habitat. Yeah, I think that's.
This project is totally necessary. This has been a problem area for 20 years. And I'm hopeful, some of my district, all of it, but it just for the area there, I think it's been for 40, 50 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
And it's been fixed a little, fixed a little, fixed a little.
It used to be everything, so.
Yeah, it used to be.
It
It
used
used to be the state highway.
It actually flooded up to the start of the
It's been a long term. There's been some area.
and houses and
Yeah, and all the way to county highway, or sorry, state highway 33. You know. So we're hopeful, this would provide capacity, on different scale, but along the lines of what we're doing. Providing some additional storage area for the
We've got a county record too.
Yeah, there's Whalers is just to the north, and then there's a village park too. I shouldn't have mentioned it. We have met. With the local commission, the board at the village side, they are supportive of this as well. To the extent that the village owns a parcel within the project area, and they have agreed to donate it to the county for the project, so they're fully supportive. Still pending, we'll be working with the landowners. That's obviously our first task, but kind of having the resources to be able to So, it's apparent to Fish and Wildlife, I mean, they know obviously that, there are some conditions as far as, if we need to scale up or down with the project based on what is feasible with acquisition. And, same recognition.
Right.
Motion. Mr. Myers, Dr. Schuster, second. Favor say aye. Aye. Approved. Number 5, resolution, Kentucky Washington Land Trust Held Conservation Easement for the Federal Signatory to the purposes.
Yeah, I wanted to go through this in detail. So, because there are a few things that I wanted to highlight for the committee where I kind of need a decision point. If you prefer, we can, try and take care of other items, or I'm glad to just go ahead and move through this. But I did want to highlight a few things in the easement for you and for your consideration. So, move through.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Will you be going through in the course of this, maybe good distinguish the differences between and this? So there's an easement that's out on Super Bridge.
this will be the easement.
I'm sorry.
Oh, lines in?
Lines in.
Okay. I didn't bring that. I can try and highlight it. I will say that Lionsden is a lot more streamlined of an easement. So it is circa 15 years ago.
We've gotten smarter.
And more detailed. And that's part of why I wanted to go through this. So to that point though, Supervisor Ross, that's my intent, is to highlight some things that I need the committee to consider. So I will refer to the easement page number if that's okay, as we go through this, and obviously include your packet. So one first note, you have a track change version that represents the third iteration of track changes. So it would have been way too messy for me to give you track changes from day one. And those are a reflection of 3 corporation council reviews and back and forth and land trust reviews and comments, etc. So what you're seeing is kind of the latest iteration where changes could be made and accepted between the land trust and the county. We've done that with corporation council advice. This is kind of the last set then of track changes. And again, some of these aren't problematic, it's just the time in which they came up. So I'm just gonna highlight the ones where there may be some discussion.
So to be clear, work council has weighed in on this.
3 times.
And this is, from her perspective, good for us to consider from a legal perspective.
Yes. Yes, and I'll highlight those areas that, again, not a legal issue, but one for the committee to consider policy-wise. But yes, everything so far in here, the version that you're seeing is acceptable for council. And has at least visited with the land trust on at least 2 occasions also, so comments back and forth.
And that is just to be clear again, the context, land trust finds this acceptable as well.
Except for those points that I'm gonna highlight for you. Yes, but in 95.6% of the case, yes. And again, even on the 4%, it's kind of a nuance, but. So if there are track changes that I skip over, it's because kind of it was just a corrective fact that either both sides have agreed to, court counsel has agreed to, etc. So I'm gonna highlight those that are just a point of discussion. And some of them still minor, but I'll just bring them up. So the first one, we'll start in easy, which is on page 2. At the bottom of the page 2 of the easement. So it's in the section II, protection of relatively natural habitat or stimulate ecosystem. This is really just, and again, we need to be nitpicky because all the terms have definitions and those definitions carry the weight behind the easement and stuff. So in this instance, there are a lot of small things that we changed from our end so that we were clear about the definition. So one of them, as you can see, there's a strikeout of fertile soil and a change to soil health. That is a definition that you just heard from Katie, that we can live with, and fertile soil usually typically is used in farming as opposed to kind of what we're talking about here. So anyway, it just was a nuance of the definition. And the other is just a recognition of the regionally rare species. And so again, that being documented in the natural area plan, we wanted to keep that in there. Again, we've modified those references. Nothing there too much for consideration, I guess, but I just wanted to highlight it. The next point is on page 4, at the bottom of page 4 of the easement under Article 1. I'll try and scroll along here too. So bottom of easement, page 4, prevent inconsistent development. So there's a reference to government conservation policy, and we were just looking to define that. The land trust thought it was redundant to refer to item B, III above, which basically defines conservation policy. And we're basically saying, well, we don't want any assumptions about what that might be because it's the county that's setting policy in this case. So we don't want it to be a broad definition that, this is the county's conservation policy. So we want to be clear on what it is we're referring to. So we're just referring to above where it's defined, and that's supposed to be a discussion about.
Can I just take a
Yeah,
step back?
I'm in the weeds.
No, I want context. This easement, we would be granting to Zaki Washington Land Trust.
Correct.
We are currently the owner.
Correct.
So we are granting this easement to satisfy land trust's concerns about future development and use of the property and such. So in going through and negotiating this easement, the position the county is taking is to build in the protections that the county wants, or is it to satisfy to the minimum degree possible the land trust's reservations and concerns about the use of the property?
Thank you for clarifying.
That's a good, super hard question. I'll try and do my best to answer it. So first of all, the agreement for this joint acquisition was that the county would be providing conservation easement, and that is also, part of what we told our federal partners that, that we got federal grants directly from as well. So just at the outset, we agreed to do a conservation easement, and now we're kind of the nuts and bolts of it. I would say it's a little of both, Supervisor Ross. It's both at the county, some protections or viewpoints. I mean, obviously that's what the county corporation council represents, is the county's interest. So there are some of that when you get into the nuances of it. But to your point, it's largely saying, I mean, we agree again on 90% or more, 95% or more of the easement here. So it's largely the minimal changes acceptable to the land trust to provide for protection of conservation value of the property and consistent with our federal funding sources as well. So I don't know if I answered your question. It's a little bit of both. We're looking at, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, but we're looking at some of the county's interest to be able to develop the property according to what we've already talked about in our master plan with the land trust that everybody's on board with, but making sure that there's nothing in there that would be tripped up by having the easement.
So one question I have, and I echo this concern, what limitations does this put on the county for future development? Not that we're gonna turn it into a subdivision, obviously, but, I know a couple of years ago, Noah was looking at doing some, but if we wanted to put a sort of building out there for nature preserve or like, I mean.
I'm gonna get to that. I think that's an excellent question, and that's the 5%. And so overall, we agree, so just to take a step back, the conservation easement will protect the conservation values, which means basically they're very limited. And as we go through this, I'll point that out, they have kind of right now 2 categories, kind of highest protection, which means little we can do that's not in the accepted master plan, which is why I approved the map, we'll talk a little bit about that, but it really says, right, no development, no mining, no sale, no land division, no many things. The other part is a minimal protection area, which we get into, which is the areas that we largely identified for passive recreational use development, i.e. things like we need to provide access in the parking lot. And to minimize the potential conflict there, Supervisor Ross's point, this is something that's different than the Lions Den easement. Lions Den easement was uniform accessible property, and it listed some items, and that became a little bit of a gray area. And so we're trying to clean that up. So one of the things that I'll get to, one of the big discussion points, and I don't want to jump right to it, but I know this is providing context. So one of the big discussion points right now is there is a highest protection area for the easement, which is basically everything except this 6 acres. So 5 acres being where we intend to put most of our passive recreational use development on, being parking lot, maybe a future pavilion structure, nature center, whatever. Handicap accessible trails that might need to be paved, provide some access, whereas the rest of the property wouldn't have that. Things like that. So there's 6 acres because there's 5 on the southern part where that happens. There's 1 acre on the top that provides basically for maintenance access on a road. That allows us to get to the north side of the village. So right now, the land trust has it as those 6 acres covered by a minimal protection easement, whereas the rest of the property covered by a highest protection easement. Just to further, and this is in the packet with the maps, and that's why I included the funding map. So if you look at the funding map, I'm gonna try and scroll to it. So the whole property, with the exception of those 6 acres that I just referred to, that is also kind of where the county invested its acquisition dollars. So those are labeled. I know the labeling might be a little hard to see.
Okay.
Thank you. It is on packet page 88. Packet page 88. So this is the funding map. So to take a step back, this colorful map, what it basically says is that other than those 6 acres, the property is already encumbered with 99.9% of what's in the easement. So the highest use protection area that I was describing basically is already covered by all these federal agencies' deed restrictions. And so we don't really, we're not
Non-negotiable target.
we kind of feel like it's one and the same. So the easement by the land trust is another layer of protection. It does probably have, some things that are slightly different, but largely we have the same restrictions by all these federal agencies, which is no selling, no land dividing, no development, conservation, protect conservation values. Some of them go a little bit deeper. The Forest Service funding says, up front, we had to say, no mining of non-metallic resources, et cetera. The conservation easement does that too. So the easement at the land trust, the difference between what's already been encumbered by our federal grants is really those 6 acres. they are preferring a minimal protection area for their easement on those 6 acres, whereas I'll just be honest, going into this, part of the reason why we did this jigsaw puzzle was to keep out the acres and leave them unencumbered. And that was kind of the direction that I got from past experience in administration and stuff. So we worked really, really hard to identify those up front and keep them outside of the federal funding restriction. The Land Trust recognizes that, and their take on it is let's have it as a minimal protection area. So that's one of the big things for consideration by the committee is, do we leave it as a minimal protection area, or do we strike that and just say this is gonna remain essentially unencumbered? And by that, it won't be encumbered by federal grants, and it won't be encumbered by. And again, it's all understood that this is the area that we're going to provide the infrastructure for the park.
Yeah, I mean. you kinda
And that
lost-
also
kinda
gets
lost
to
me-
binding.
Kinda lost me a little bit there, but, just generally speaking, I want to give us as much flexibility as possible. I guess that's kind of.
Yeah. And that's,
I wouldn't want the easement that we offer to take the maximum protection of one of these parcels, like parcels, and elevate that to all of the other parcels.
right,
And so, that makes a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but we want to maintain, and I like to think of myself as a conservationist,
Yeah.
but.
Me too.
But looking out for Ozaki County, we
Yeah.
need to maintain maximum flexibility for
our.
whatever we want to do within
Yeah.
the constraints of the grants we receive and within the nominal agreement that we have with the Ozaki County.
So I really, again, other than the 6 acres, I don't see that. I pointed out that as Forest Service just because they specifically asked us to put that forward, but the other federal grants like the Fish and Wildlife funding also restricts us from doing non-public mining. We just didn't have to sign off on a legal document at the time, but it's actually in the e-restriction. So just a different way of handling it. So to your point, Supervisor Ross, the conservation easement really shouldn't put anything different on the federally funded portions of the property that we already have committed to. Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, coastal management. It's really gonna be those 6 acres that are, right now, they're totally unencumbered. I mean, they're encumbered by the county, but that's it. I mean, obviously, we have our own conservation policies, but I was just talking about. And that's kind of why, that first one I started out, it seemed like a small thing, but that conservation policy, whatever that is by the county, defines what it is we do for these 6 acres. So we may say, this is a good use of those 6 acres, because therefore we're protecting the other, 130 acres, 120.
And the argument for us retaining unencumberment on that is that we pay.
That was one of the, that was kind of how we looked at it with the funding piece, yes. Is that the county's funds were put toward the acquisition of those 6 acres, if you will.
It's a good strategy, by the way. I like that thinking, but really, I don't know why.
So it was really difficult because obviously this came in over the course of 4 years. So, but we tried really hard as things were moving and shifting to retain something. And I will just say that this, again, we have had no problems, no significant problems with the land. They have been great in administering with Lions Den, et cetera. But, I'm not gonna be here in 30 years from now. You all will maybe be here, but I won't be. The Land Trust, they're gonna have shift, and so there was some gray areas in Lions Den easement that they had a highest conservation. So there was some discussion about us doing the pavilion and improving the parking lot and et cetera. Whereas unencumbered, that's kind of something the county can decide. And again, it's still a partnership. We don't intend to surprise anyone, but to Supervisor Ross's point is just, it's allowing the maximum, and that's largely where we had any discussion, right? Was where we wanted to provide infrastructure. It gets down to even smaller nuances, like there's some things in the easement that say, we must provide, we must get their approval for utilities. And they must be underground. We can't always control that. I mean, that's 90% of the cases that We Energies will bury the utilities nowadays. But we can't always control it. There are some overhead utilities right now that exist crossing that 5 acres that I mentioned. I don't want to be put in a situation where we're required to bury them. I don't see the interest ever saying that, but the easement can lend to that. It says you need our permission, all future utilities should be buried, etc. Sometimes we don't even have the authority, so there's a section in here which I'll get to too, condemnation. Let's say the county highway department wants to condemn a portion of the property to Lyon County Highway C. That's addressed in here, and it says that, well, there's some conditions and that there's some payback if that happens, and so we've modified that in the county's interest. Because sometimes we can't control that. That the county highway department may, or it could be somebody else that is condemning some land for utilities if we can't control that, and we don't feel that the county should then therefore be responsible for paying the fee, if you will. I'm sorry, there's a lot of detail here, and that's why I put it in the packet, and I'm trying to highlight the distinction.
I was looking for the discussion, there was a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a ton, and we're trying to keep this on I'm trying to keep this on time, and we haven't stalled, we've been working on this since before the property is acquired. So I don't mean to surprise you with this. At the same time, we are kind of under a timeline to get this reported, both from our federal grants and also from the land trust funding. They need to get kind of a deadline for this, and we have, we need to move this along. So that's fine.
What do we think? Can you speak to that? I mean, because if the discussion goes long, or there are issues to be resolved, we should have that in context of what the hard deadlines are.
Yeah, so, I told land trust we try really hard, hence why it's on your committee today to get it to county board in March. However, we allow for basically a 1-month window if that can't happen.
So
So if you have concerns today, we need to do some additional work. We have another month, but that's really the hard bit.
my concern, that question was, you said we're 95%.
Yeah.
And this 5% doesn't seem like, I mean, I'm obviously biased up towards the ground side, but it doesn't seem very unreasonable. Like you said, we can't.
I don't think so.
So how contentious are these negotiations?
Not,
How far off are we on
so far not at all.
How
And,
far off are we on this 5%?
I don't think we're off that. I don't think we're that far off. But I will say their personal preference right now is we keep a minimal protection area. I wanted to get your input on whether that's the case or not because of these 6 acres.
Yeah, that's not.
Is that enough for future growth? Yeah.
Yeah, again, because the federal government speed restrictions already recorded and committed to are on the rest of the property.
Okay.
So we can't extend it. We also can't move it. So, that's one of the downsides is that we had to do our due diligence and planning ahead of time to say, this is where the stuff's gonna go, because we can't, these are all defined, each one of these funding areas is defined by a legal description, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Right, but I mean, you could look 100 years down the line and you might do something else, and then
Agreed.
how hard is it to change this?
So the way that happens, and that's not totally restricted, but the way that happens, is that 1, we need land trust approval. 2, it has to be so this whole easement refers to our master plan, which, I'll boil it down to the map that was included in your packet, but in reality, it's a much longer document, just basically describing the map. But any features, let's say, I don't even know what to say. Well, 1, so up front, we said we're gonna build a stairway to the lake. That's one of the kind of requirements of our grants, provide public access there. That's in the highest use protection area. It'll be in the master plan, therefore the land trust basically says, yeah, we want to see plans, we want to review them, but that's gonna be an allowable use. Conversely, let's say there is something we didn't think about in the master plan. I don't know what, I'm just gonna say something crazy, but a slide from the top of the bluff to the lake, right? We didn't envision that, we didn't put it in the master plan. That is something that they could at the outset just reject. If not, we would have to incorporate a master plan and say why it's important, they would have to approve that. there is a way to modify it, but it gives the land trust a lot more ability to basically have, the right to say, no, we're not gonna modify it. So we're likewise also trying to envision everything that could possibly be the case, but realizing that again, I mean, going back to the guts of this, we are preserving this for the natural features and a little bit of passive recreation and public access. So we really, again, on 95% of the property, we really don't see that there's a difference between what the land trust is hoping for and what the county is hoping for. And even on that 5%, I think we're both understanding what's gonna happen there. It's just a matter of process about how it happens. Do we have to wait 2 months for approval on stuff, or can we, move under the county's timeline, things like that?
So my position on that 6 acres should be, we bought it, we paid for it. It should not be under a limited, whatever the lower.
Yeah, protection area, yeah, or these. And that was the main part I wanted to highlight in here, so we'll get to it, but that's the main part. So with that said, I think we had a note, and that would be removed, references to that.
Let's get back, first of all, are you, this gentleman here, are you here for a specific reason?
Yes, I am. It's coming up shortly.
Maybe we should just pause this for a
So
second.
yeah, absolutely can, that's what I was asking.
There is an issue, and I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
So are you here before I?
Yes.
Concession thing?
Yes.
Thank
you,
Is
Mr.
it okay
Chairman.
to just take care of it so you can? Sure. Say.
Pause and move that up.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a motion to suspend the agenda.
I think it's just a request to move ahead.
Okay, we'll come back to this right after this. So,
Yeah.
item number 6, approve the contract with professional concessionaire resident services at Auburn Hills and County.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have bid out we have a private concessionaire that operates both restaurants, Auburn Hills and Mequon. Last year, after a lot of thought, discussion, etc., we decided to terminate our current concessionaire contract at the end of the last golf season, even though there was still time on that contract. Both parties agreed ultimately that that would be the best thing to do, that we would rebid it out.
So the bottom line.
It was more of it was somewhat of a performance thing. We identified many things throughout the year that were not according to contract and not meet their obligations. And to their point, they were dealing with some challenges, and everybody is, staffing, etc. But we just didn't feel like it. We asked for changes that wasn't occurring, and then we mutually agreed at the end that maybe it was best to move on. So that's what we've done. Historically, our concessionaire contract, and by historically I mean within the last several years, probably 10 or more, we have done bidding, and we have largely accepted a lump sum proposal in contract. Okay, so basically it was a rent, right? It was a rent. It was a fixed lump sum fee. Part of the reason we went to that was before 10 years ago, we had more of a percentage of gross income type situation like we're proposing here. The problem is that the concessionaire had their own financial software, packaging, etc. We often didn't get the financial information. It was difficult to proof it. It was difficult to hold the concessionaire to, percent gross, etc. And so we just got away from that from the standpoint of usability. What's changed though is now, as part of this RFP and part of our new electronic golf system, we have both point of sale and then also something that our concessionaire will be on. So part of the requirement is that they will use our software, so we will have access to the financials so that we can verify, what they're saying in fact is the case, and that we can base their proposal on percent gross revenue as opposed to a flat fixed fee. Flat fixed fee, had its limitations. It was easy to administer, but it didn't, didn't say much for growth, or, you know, what the concessions were actually doing. So we put out an RFP that was spelled out in here. We asked for basically a percentage of gross sales, as the outcome, for operation, and we said it could be at one or the other, or both golf courses, which was also a change. We used to have two separate concessionaires, one at each course. That got a little bit administratively challenging at times, and then we combined it. That was a benefit to some concessionaires, but not so much to others. So in this case, we gave a choice, but both of our proposals were for operation of both clubhouse restaurants, concessions. So, let me just see, so we bid this out, we got, basically 2 proposals. And we are, as a result of that, I'll just say upfront that both of their proposals, as far as a percent gross fee, were exactly the same. So, this one is 4%, as was the other proposal. But there were some other intangible items that we also evaluated in the proposals that we like. And so the recommendation is for CDG, Sports and Hospitality Group, which has an affiliation with Concordia University, which is one of the intangibles that we like, is that we feel they have indicated and said in their proposal, et cetera, that there's a nice affiliation there, so we can get students involved. It will help address what we always perceive as a challenge with staffing at the golf course, because it's long hours and stuff, so you can get student help and student employees and student interns and things like that. So, you know, it just adds to the capabilities. But beyond that, we obviously reviewed all the other considerations for their experience. And you can see they have a lot of experience in the golf industry, over 25 years. They have a lot of experience in this area, the affiliation with Concordia, and we felt that those. The other proposal was also very good, and it was a very difficult decision, but we felt that those intangibles, given the same gross revenue proposal, gave our recommendation to CDG, Sports and Hospitality Group, for both courses. I will say I did have a call from the other concessionaire that put the proposal in, and again, we haven't had this discussion, and I think it's something that could happen, but they, you know, might still be interested in partnering with the other concessionaire potentially, if that is something that they're open to. But at the end of the day, we're recommending CDG, Sports and Hospitality Group, for the concessionaire contract. It'll be on an annual basis, but with good performance, if you will, following the contract, we will automatically review, and so we can extend the contract without. The way the contract written is, we can extend it without having to come back and, you know, rebid or come back to you. So, and that would only extend for 5 years in the whole situation.
What's the approximate value of that 4%?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've had.
Maybe I have the answer.
Unfortunately, we have had very not good documentation on the gross sales in the past. What I can say to answer that question is our past lump sum contract has been $6,000 in a flat fee. So we anticipate that the 4% is going to be minimum. I don't expect that it's going to be less than what we've dealt with a flat over a year or 2. Yeah. So I know that's not a great answer, Supervisor Ross, but it's, we won't be making less in our estimations. But we just don't have very good documentation on sales in the past, even though we
What was the
tried.
issue with the different softwares?
even though we've tried, even though we've made a requirement of the contract, even though we've sought it out, you know, there's ways to document losses in businesses. You know, we're not making any money, we didn't make any money for 3 years in a row.
And that's the point. The point is we're trying to, you know, it's a service to the golfers.
And
is it a better environment to get golf?
Thank you. Yeah, at the end of the day, what's most important to us is, I mean, yes, it's nice to get some of the revenue, but at the end of the day, what's most important to us is consistent, good service to our customers. And that's what's been lacking, honestly. Consistent. So it'll be more than the $6,000.
If they do a good job, dealing with golfers using it.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the major complaints the last few years, particularly in Hawthorne Hills, has been the concessionary service. And so we're hoping to resolve that, move forward and get a long-term commitment. But we, if you will, we decided to move to an annual lease as a probationary period so that we can have a little bit of, you know, make sure we work out any kinks.
I guess I'm gonna entertain a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Chestnut, Supervisor Jones. Any comments? None, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
I'm open for questions if you like. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan.
I'm Greg McLean, the managing partner of GDG Golf, and I'm the head golf coach at Concordia. We use Meek One regularly, especially in the spring. I play at both golf courses and I've seen the concessionaire, okay? That's why I'm involved. We got a call from Evan, and originally I was looking at the school doing it. And I brought out one of our sports and hospitality professors, and he looked at it and came back to me and said, you know what, I don't think the school can do it. I said, well, that's too bad, Dan, because now I want to do it, okay? And Dan also wants to do it, okay? So the two of us formed a partnership, and since then we've brought in 2 additional partners. One of them has an extensive food background, and the other one has an entrepreneurial background. So we're looking to get in this thing and get going. And we anticipate sales in the 500,000 to 600,000 between the 2.
Yeah, if not more.
If not more, but the first year, we don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that Jody was killing it over there a few years ago, and whatever.
I mean, our goal is to keep,
Yeah, it's fallen down since then.
yeah, our goal is to keep the menu simple, keep it priced appropriately. It's not the bog, it's not any of the private clubs or fire ridge in the area, and keep it so that people want to come on. Instead of having 1 beer, you have 2,
Yeah,
or
well,
whatever.
that was my concern, when we did that on the next motion too, is keeping public golf affordable,
Correct.
you know.
I'm a PJ golf professional, have been for 40 years. I live in Grafton, and, you know, this is my home, has 23 years, so.
Which is not nice, you know, I'll just say, we wanted, you know, there's a vested interest in doing well. And Greg and his group, is, you know, like, and lives here, et cetera. You know, the other company, while really good at still, you know, didn't have that investment from
They respect you,
inside the town.
they respect me too, the county, the bog, and.
Oh, that,
Right, yeah, the previous, yes, because that
Yeah,
there was,
yeah.
the other bid was from out of the county.
Yes.
So one question I have just from the logistics standpoint. Does the county own a liquor license? Or I know that.
Yeah, good question. So, it's a little bit different. The liquor license has to be issued to the concessionaire. So in Mequon, they have liquor licenses available that will go through the city traditional way of doing it. That's how it's always been for Mequon. We don't expect any problems. The past concessionaire has to turn in theirs, so we know that there will be one
At least one
available.
available.
One available. Other hills has always been a different problem. There are no licenses to our last acknowledgement through the town of Saukville. But the county there's a special state statute that allows us to get it directly through the state. And the county will take that up, but we actually have to physically list exactly who the concessionaire is. And they have to be a joint applicant, if you will. So the license still goes to the concessionaire, but the county will pass a resolution to use the state statute. That unfortunately is a longer process. And so we're hoping to start it right away, but it's probably a 7-month process, so I know you'll probably see a resolution next NRC that'll go to county board for that liquor license, but it takes a while to state. So we're hoping that's not the case, but it may be the case that we don't have the right way to be able to enforce that process.
And then in this lease agreement, like who's responsible for, the maintenance of things like beverage card?
Yeah, that's all detailed in the contract, so.
Do you own that?
We actually own the cart, they take care of the service and so forth, so we will do all the maintenance, but they actually do the service and the use of it and staffing of the beverage cart,
But like,
staffing at the turn. Yeah,
if there was something wrong with it, that's on us.
Yeah, that's on us, we own the infrastructure, and the same with the kitchens, so if something needs to be upgraded, particularly for safety or
I was
health.
looking for clarity in that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
That shit is.
Well, no, it's, you know,
It's all-
we're
it's all
looking for this
detailed.
to be a long-term thing, so we want it to work and be more profitable for the county as well, and, you know, we want to be profitable as well. That's what we're here for.
good service is what we're looking at. Good
And my
consistent.
son worked at Leafland for B&E, so he's now at the River Club in the kitchen, okay, so I've seen it firsthand, I've heard his horror stories of what was going on, so I feel pretty good that we can upgrade. So,
So, as far as that's right.
you know, and I did talk to Town of Saukville, we can get a beer and wine license quickly. There may be one liquor license coming open in the town, there's only 4.
Yeah.
3 of them are pretty solid, but there is one wobbling right now, and we may be able to get that potentially. No, and neither is Bosch, no. But, there is one that's potentially up that we may be able to acquire, so we've already been on campus talking to some people, I've already got 5 or 6 employees in my mind hired, and looking to probably get another 20, 25.
Wish you the best of luck.
Okay. All right, thank you, appreciate it, everybody, have a great day, all right, sounds good.
I don't know.
They're,
Appreciate the,
yeah.
I will do my best to keep us moving and, yeah. Okay, so, I guess, I mean, we were almost there and we had this discussion at large, but, the first point in the easement, that the minimal protection area comes up is on, I lost my page notes, easement page 5. Let's see if I can. So packet page 63, that's the first time this comes up, talks about the easement areas, so you'll see that there is the highest protection area, again, overlaps with our federal area, approximately 125 acres. There's a standard protection area, there is no standard protection areas listed for this property. And then there's a minimal protection area, which is those 6 acres. So what you'll see is some finessing with the language, but the question is whether we want to strike that minimal protection area. It comes up again on with the details, it comes up again on easement page 10, article 5, minimal protection area. So that really gets into what they're hoping to accomplish under the minimal protection. So we did go back and forth again, the land trust preference, this is important for them to keep in from our interest, maybe not as much. Rhonda's weighed in on it. So really, this is a kind of a policy decision of the committee. Whether we,
If it's not a minimal protection area, we want no restrictions on
doesn't get covered by the easement. So those 6 acres basically get
it. Carved out.
carved out of the easement. Yeah. Correct.
for us to do that, we will.
I mean, essentially, but I mean, our understanding with the land trust is that we're gonna do it to support the park, but that, you know, and that's their understanding too, but it's just, again, it gets down to the process and a lot of details and logistics about easements and utilities and.
I mean, not that we simplify it, but I think we're getting stuck in the weeds here with every word. I think I would rather just give you the direction to, on that last 5%, continue to get as much flexibility as possible. Without scrutinizing every page and word.
Understood. And that's really what, that's kind of the policy direction I was hoping to get, so we can, if that's consensus, which I guess I can.
Yes.
Are there other issues beyond that parcel that we should provide you policy about?
That one's gonna resolve a lot.
And to be clear, that was again, for the conservation part, but just thinking forward, flexibility.
No, we need total flexibility.
Yeah, I was.
Especially on that.
Put a skyrise at 580 years.
There are some few detailed nuances that I could just use a little bit of a weighing in on. They have, in the highest use protection area, they have a restriction on the width of the trail to 8 feet. The highest protection area will include our multi-use trail, and the minimum standard usually for getting funding, DOT and other grants is 10 feet. So again, I'd like to propose that as opposed to what they're saying is 8.
Yep.
Again, it'll be in the master plan, so it's not like we're gonna try and run a road through there or anything. It's gonna be defined in the master plan, but just to allow that.
Hey, you want to handcuff future funding out?
Even if you got our own maintenance vehicle on there. Yeah.
Just so you know too, it's on that master plan map, it was included packet, but that runs along the road frontage, but it's technically on property, and it will cross through the highest protection area. Okay, so I'm kind of hearing, and so that was defined on page 8 of the easement. There was some restrictions on resource management disturbance, and one is kind of, again, in the high protection area, soil disturbance. We're okay with that. We're not gonna mind or anything, but we just wanted to clarify is that restoration was possible, because clearly that's a goal for both of us, which means we may need to move dirt and we may need to take it off site in order to restore wetlands. Not our preference, but we may need to do it. So we want to have the ability. Right now, as it's written, that's not the case. The land trust, I think, is very open to that understanding, just kind of rewriting it that way. That's
Just to clarify that, that's not a deed restriction.
No, not with the federal, right?
So that's where I'm nervous, where a deed restriction says one thing, it's a pretty low bar.
Yep.
You know, but we have to meet that.
Yep.
And then to what degree are there additional impositions on top of those deed restrictions that we would be signing up for with this? That's where I get nervous. That gives away flexibility.
And I fully understand, and that's what that's what I'm trying to highlight for you, that's what I'm trying to identify. So the federal ones don't say anything about, their restriction is we can't sell. Forest Service particular, this is one that you were trying to identify between like Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife. We can move dirt off of Fish and Wildlife. We can't do that on the Forest Service one. So there is a little bit of a distinction there. But both of them say we can't sell any non-metallic mining resources, etc. The easement, so it's somewhere in between but the easement kind of reflects the Forest Service, which said we can't take it off the property. And so, but the Forest Service also goes on to say that, restoration would allow for it. And that's where it's not super clear and easy. And that's what we're trying to define.
I get that. I'm not trying to rewrite that.
No, it's a lot.
But, philosophically, we want to, whatever the lowest bar is in those deed restrictions, that's what we want the easement to reflect. And then land trust should be able to look at the Forest Service deed restriction and say that accomplishes our purposes for a higher need of conservation protection.
Yeah.
We're already committed.
Right,
Yeah.
right, we don't need to extend that across the entire property. And I hear what I'm saying, and I am thinking about the work that's involved in that, but
I mean, they will be, to your point. So, the deed restrictions, like the federal government refers to a 700-page federal document sometimes, right? So there's a lot buried in there. The difference is, like, if I just have land trust rewrite the deed restrictions, they're kind of vague until you dig into all the federal, other, you can just refer to federal statute 55, 64.15, 670. You have to dig into the 700-page document. We generally know what's there. Anyway, to your point, there is more here in this conservation easement than is written in the deed restriction, but the intents are very similar. So there's probably, I'm trying to identify those areas where they are different and do the minimal.
That's the, I think,
If I told the land trust to only replicate the deed, I think there's a lot of gray area, is what I'm saying.
and we don't want to get into the, on the spot, we don't want to get into that level of weeds at this committee. I think what we want to do is provide that philosophical, here's what we're trying to do. We don't want to accept more restrictions across the entire property than the deeds require us to, or our philosophical land trust priorities. So
yeah,
go forth and multiply.
Okay, all right, I'm just trying to, I think honestly, the minimal protection area, like, carries throughout the plan in all the parts that I identified, so I think it resolves a lot, and I knew that was gonna be the one to discuss. I'm just quickly trying to flip through here. The only other one, I guess, maybe so you're aware, easement page 13. That would be 71. Actually, 71. We had a difference about notices. And I have I have an example of this. So basically, the land trust started out with kind of like 90 days notice to the landowner, failure to notify the, anyway, so we changed it from 90 to 60. Some of these notices go to the point of where we are, to Supervisor Chessel's point, where we are proposing to do something in the highest protection use area, we need to have their permission. It could be as simple as a boardwalk by a scout, so it's in the master plan, the land trust has generally accepted that that's it, but we still need to have them review the design and approve it. If I wait 90 days, I probably won't have an Eagle Scout anymore. So, on some things, and we asked for kind of differentiation or whatever, but we just generally felt like 2 months, 60 days was sufficient. There are some more serious things here, like, notification about failure to comply with easement overall, et cetera. But so that's one, we're asking for a shorter time frame of notice. 60 days as opposed to 90. We still think that's
It's still pretty long.
That's
fairly
these are
generous.
these are high school kids that procrastinated.
That's
And
the
then all of a sudden,
extreme.
like, I gotta get this done in 2 weeks, then I have 60 days.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's the extreme. Please keep in mind, I've just given you where this, that's the extreme on one side. The other side is it could be a real serious legal issue that they need to review, whatever. So it's hard to, without even more layers, it's hard to distinguish between something simple and something complicated. And then I guess one last thing that is of policy decision again is on the next page, easement page 14. What did we say, 74? 72, okay. 72 at the top, cost and expenses. So this falls under the, let me just double check if this is the one. I think it falls under the, well, there's one for condemnation also. So I don't know if this is actually the right section, but there is one. The land trust, so if condemnation occurs that it impacts the property, I'm just going to use the utilities for instance. Let's say if they condemn it because they have to run let's say the city of Port Washington condemns it, a portion of the property, because they have to run a water lateral. So the third party condemnation, with condemnation, they have to go through evaluation of the property and then they pay accordingly. They don't just get to take it. County does that too. So in that scenario, third party, city of Port Washington is doing it because they want to run a water main. The land trust and the county split the proceeds of that because of our roughly equal, or we split it proportionally to our original investment in the property. So county gets paid for its proportion of the original investment, land trust gets paid for its portion. If there's condemnation by the county, the only one I can really think of is if the highway department took some land for County Highway C. I'm just trying to give a real example, but let's say that that's the scenario, county condemns it because they want to widen C. The land trust is saying that we need to pay 100% of the impact to the land trust plus, we'll pay 100% of it according to the original purchase price or the market price at the time, whichever is greater. So we're not accepting of that. So we are basically saying that we would pay only the difference in the market value from when it was bought to now, just the difference, not the original, the original investment. So that's how that's written. I'm trying to say, because that is actually, sorry, I had the wrong page. That's on page 16 and then page 17 of the easement. So what we're saying is one of two options. We'll either pay the market difference, so the value of when it was bought and the value now, and we'll pay that difference for a condemnation by the county. Or we can go back to how they're treating any other party that condemns it, a utility, city of Port Washington, et cetera, and just divvy it proportionally, which means we will only be paying the land trust their portion, because obviously the county's not gonna pay itself. I mean, we can, but that makes sense what I'm saying.
So it's one or the other?
That's the choice. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm proposing it as the choice. They have,
Your second one, I propose, I mean,
Yeah.
basically you should just only give them their proportion of it.
yeah, okay. That's what they wrote for everybody else except the county. So any third party entity condemning is this, and then the county would pay the greater of,
No. We will match what everybody else.
Yeah.
okay. I think that's
Yeah.
fair. So we would pay proportionally, and since the way that works is, because the third party is paying land trust in the county. If it's us, the county doesn't pay itself, so we just pay the land trust of the portion of the original investment. Getting a little pause, so I'm just waiting,
Except on our 5 acres worth of frontage.
because that will not be easy. Right, that will not be an easement, and that's where likely much of this might occur. Okay, thank you. As that whole section. That was just stuff Rhonda struck. It was mainly around. I think those are the big ones. There's a few, again, not really policy decisions.
There's a vote on it, or is this just discussion?
So this would be your preference, but recommend the county board so we can keep it moving, and I'll make the changes as discussed. And that's the version that would go to the county board. Or if you feel like you need to see it again, we can bring it back in April. My preference would be to keep it moving just because of our deadlines but.
What's driving this deadline?
So the federal grants that we use for acquisition, in closing it out, we have to give them a final recorded easement. And so Our first one comes due in, on May 1st from the federal side of it for us. May 1st, we have to have it recorded into them. And for the land trust, their deadline is April. And that's in order to get the state awarded grant, so they don't even have that. In order to get it, they need to have the recording.
Let's just keep moving with the direction we gave you. Again, like a statement of mass flexibility on every question you have.
I think, again, this could be up to the committee too, but if any committee member, want to contact me about a change between now and county board, I could highlight that at county board and say this was, again, generally there was some direction given by the committee. Those are shown in here in any supplemental. I'm just trying to think of a way we can keep moving, but still give you guys time to understanding a little bit more what it covers.
It's just that 5%.
It largely is, although I can't, I'm trying to meet Supervisor Ross's direction, because
I'm feeling like a long pole.
No, I know, I'm sorry.
I
don't mean to say that, but you. So, I was trying to reflect the county's interest in having those flexible, let's just say that.
Yeah, I think county wants the most.
Lisa, do we need to, for because this would be a resolution that.
I haven't given it, I'm guessing people are gonna want to see the details of the county board.
I guess my question is,
What are we voting on?
what are we voting on? Wouldn't the board expect this committee to weigh in on that resolution and offer that to the full county board? I guess
So
it's a process.
From my take, you're voting on the content of the easement with the recommendations as suggested, so the things that I'm gonna remove and do based on our discussion here. And that resolution reflects that. So what I put in there for the easement is gonna reflect your changes. That'll go to county board as a markup, and the resolution supports adopting the easement as amended by this committee.
So beyond March.
With all the flexibility addressing your concerns, our concerns. And,
I mean, that's essentially what the resolution says, is that, we're gonna accept the easement.
So then at that point, then the land trust has to accept it.
Well, so what my hope is, that's a good point, Supervisor Cheshire. So my goal in the next 30 days is to get this back to them with what we're saying, and obviously they may have an objection about the mineral protection use area, and then we may have to delay it based on their review. But my hope is, if they can accept it based on your recommendations, that we can move it forward, and again, it's about that 5%.
But they know the urgency too, right?
They have urgency, we have urgency, a little bit, I mean, granted, we haven't, yeah, you're only seeing the ice of the tip of the iceberg on the review.
I would move to approve this easement with the direction of the board, direction of this committee, and then to wherever possible, give as much flexibility for future use.
Are we voting on the resolution?
Yes, the resolution basically is adopting, or is recommending the easement. So, yes, it would be the resolution.
So I would vote to approve the recommend.
Is it something that we should see the changes though? I mean, how does that work? I mean,
Well,
legally, we should be.
Yeah, we just.
I can certainly do that, you would see it at county board is my thought, so
Okay,
you will have, the full easement will go with county board with the resolution. And that it will basically identify those sections I took out or modified based on your direction. And if something wasn't done, I guess you'll have to let me know at county board or something, and then we can postpone or otherwise. But my hope is that I will reflect everything that.
Yeah, I mean,
are you gonna explain that county board or how?
Yeah, I'll definitely be there.
Because I mean, this seems pretty complicated too.
It is, I'll be there, Rhonda will of course be there, so.
And to clarify, my understanding of what I just proposed was anything short of the changes we recommend, then the approval doesn't carry any weight.
Right.
It's not what we approved. So,
And I think,
is that correct?
I don't think so.
And he's gonna give it to Ozaki Washington Land Trust, so there's that possibility that they might have something, so then we're slowing down once more.
yeah, we basically pulled it, we can't come to terms, if we can't come to terms that they pulled from the market.
What you're proposing.
For everybody's sake, I'm trying to keep it moving forward, understanding that it is it's a big document, which is why, you know, we've been working closely with our council and all the trust on this.
So that's my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll start and then.
Bruce, yes.
I'm just still confused. So the recommended motion is to approve and recommend the county board conservation easement, not the resolution as I was maybe.
So we can put it as amended by the Natural Resource Committee.
It's on your agenda, yeah.
I mean, if we want to add words to it, we can modify the resolution, but it was intended to be, you know, our discussion today and as modified.
So,
I'm
do you want to
going
give me an exact motion, but I'm,
So,
Well,
again,
the action
I just
item
want
is-
to be clear, because it seems like I should know these things, I suddenly having a gray area, like brain that's having more and more frequently. Are we approving the easement or the resolution?
You are recommending the resolution to the county board, and the resolution says that we are gonna accept the easement as drafted and amended by NRC. And if we need to adjust the resolution to say as amended by NRC, that's what I'm looking at. So by passing the resolution, you're saying,
Right.
accept this document as we've presented it.
And I'm not trying to be a stickler
No.
for process, I'm just trying to make sure that when it gets to the board, that they know what we recommend.
I'm gonna look at the resolution here.
Yeah,
just
it
a
speaks
second.
to the easement, doesn't really have the resolution. Recommend.
Yeah,
Motion.
that's the one.
Whereas, so now therefore be resolved, that the Ozaki County Board of Supervisors approves the conservation easement to be held by the Ozaki Washington Land Trust for Clay Bluff Cedar Grove Nature. So that is the action item, by passing the resolution, you're accepting the easement. My intent between now and when this goes to county boards is to reflect what you told me in this easement that goes through. So you could do you could probably have two motions. One, direct staff to edit it based on our discussion today, edit the easement based on our discussion today, and approve the resolution, which will then take that modified easement for approval by the county board.
So is that two motions then?
I guess I'm suggesting that, I don't.
I mean, if they're redundant, if you ask me, if they come back with the changes, then.
Right. The version, as I understand it from
If
the,
it varies.
the action item is the resolution, so you're saying we're recommending this easement.
Yes.
And my,
With changes.
and my direction is, you guys have suggested changes, and that's what I'm gonna modify to forward the county board.
So my motion was to accept this easement with the changes that we did, as a recommendation to the county board.
Right, that's the word.
But,
By the
And I second
Everybody okay with it?
So
and
there,
if
just,
there's any pushback, then it's not approved, because we are approving, the only thing we're approving is with the changes. So if anything short of that, then this approval doesn't carry any weight.
Then it has to come back here
It
again.
has to come back. We didn't approve the
Right.
changes.
Right, so if land trust doesn't approve our changes, it'll come back.
Yes.
And if everything goes smoothly, this will be on the March 1st.
Yeah.
Right, right, if we get everything resolved in the next 30
We're
days.
just trying to speed it up so it ends up in March instead of April.
Okay, I guess we have a motion by Supervisor Marquez, and by Supervisor Shesso. Any other comments?
could you clarify what that motion is?
Yeah, can-
that we're approving?
well, I have to approve the resolution for the conservation easement as amended by the NRC committee with suggested recommendations to allow the county the most flexibility for the, what do you want me to say, for the what?
County's interest. I didn't,
No, I think,
Okay.
No, he just wants it, right? Whatever's acceptable at this point.
So, motion to approve the resolution for the conservation easement as amended by the Natural Resources Committee with suggested recommendations to allow the county the most flexibility for the county's interest. This makes sense.
How about maybe just,
To allow the most flexibility for the county's interest. Take the county out the first time. That makes sense.
or could we just say, maybe we can get rid of the flexibility part and just say in the county's interest?
The suggested recommendations.
In the county's interest.
In or for? For the counties.
Or maybe four.
Yes.
Okay, to approve, motion to approve the resolution for the conservation easement as amended by the Natural Resources Committee with the suggested recommendations.
Done.
In the county's interest, or
In the
for the county, or for the county's
For
interest.
the county,
It's just with the adjusted, with the recommended, what did you say
With
before?
the recommended changes period,
Period.
we could just get rid of that.
Yeah.
The last part,
Yeah.
That's right.
with the recommended changes, because you guys are the county's interest.
Yeah, and I would say that probably needs to capture the minutes, you know,
About
the.
our
flexibility,
discussion,
maintaining
our discussion.
flexibility, for the county's future. flexibility.
I'll tell you what, I will do my best, knowing that I gotta get this Tony Trustin back and then back to Rhonda, but I will do my best to give you guys the version that's gonna go to county board before it actually goes in the packet. And feel free to call me too if there's something.
And you'll have highlighted, so.
Yeah, I'm not trying to track changes.
It's a lot of reading.
Yeah, no, so it's apologize.
Yeah. All right, that's all vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Vote. Motion carries. What is that motion?
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Sarah, session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, number 7, 2022 golf course operations review and review summary and recommended 2023 golf course fees, / rates and program.
Okay, yeah, lots of stuff in this agenda. I'm just gonna scroll ahead, so. Year in review, we did very well. We did equivalent to last year once, kind of expenses and revenues are balanced. You know, net gain, if you will, quote unquote profit, it's reinvested into the course. So, sorry, I'm just scrolling ahead here. So, yeah, just you're in summary quickly. We had 74,000 rounds of golf, 2.5 million in gross revenue roughly collected in 2020. The numbers in 2021 were 77,000, so just slightly down on rounds. But the net revenue almost identical at 2.5. So we essentially saw a 5% decrease in overall rounds played, but only about a 1% decrease in net revenue. And to that point, we experienced about 26 less days of golf due to weather circumstances, et cetera, opening days, closing days in 22 than 21. So a decrease in rounds. Essentially, we were probably not even with last year, which by the way, last year was a record year for us. So this is all very good news. Quickly, and again in your packet, but positive factors, 32% increase in the discount ID cards that were sold from last year. Pace of play was good with our new golf carts that you had approved purchase, and we finally got after 2 years. 5% increase in the green fees. And again, just some of the benefits I think that we're seeing are just everybody's in general, the community's flexible work schedules. We feel that, you know, they're able to schedule more rec time around their flexible work schedules. Our goals for 2023 are largely the same, but we're looking at a net revenue of 2.3 million. And we expect about 68,000 in rounds. So again, we're trying to average it out over the last 5 years.
We took a 5% rate increase last year, and they're looking for a rate increase again this year.
I'll talk a little bit about it because it's not across the board, but we are looking for an increase mainly in the golf cart fees, but a little bit also in the green fees. And this is in relationship to our competitors, and we can look at that in detail. That was included in your packet. We're hoping to increase the sale of discount ID cards. We're also looking, and we had proposed this last year and started to work towards this, but we're gonna now collect some revenue from no-show golfers, which has happened a lot for us.
So what does that entail? I mean, because like weather, I mean, if it's.
Right, so
What
it would-
kind of gray area are you giving grace?
yeah, there would be a grace for both weather and time notification. So if you notify us at any time before you arrive that you're canceling your tee time.
So it can be an hour before that.
Yeah, I think we essentially had it as like an hour before.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of grace. We would work with you. Definitely weather is a situation, but if you're strictly a no-show, like your tee time came and gone and we never heard from you, that's when we would be charging a fee for that. There's a lot of grace, and we often, I mean, that's kind of been our policy now, we just haven't followed through with any.
No, I'm fine with that. I just.
Yeah.
Grace is what I was worried about, because again, as much play as we get and the tee times are coveted, the no shows, we could have got revenue there. It's not like.
Yes, that's our point, is we just, if it strictly is a no-show, and we never heard from you, like, I broke my leg, can't golf today, I'm canceling my tee time.
Yeah, well, I just.
We wanna allow for that, for
Yeah,
sure.
things come up, just, yeah.
You just heard we're gonna have a new concessionaire, we hope to have some improvements there. And we'll continue to do our community ventures as far as, donations. So to get to the nitty gritty, summary of 23 recommendations, a 50 cent increase in 9-hole golf cart rate, and $1 increase in the 18-hole golf cart rate. This is to be more competitive with our counterparts as far as what they charge for golf carts.
Would you use the word more comparable?
Comparable, sorry.
It's competitive to you.
Yeah, no, I meant comparable,
Being
yes.
lesser is competitive.
Yeah, no, comparable. And this is just on the golf carts, and recognize also that we have brand new golf carts. So, there's a benefit to the user on that. And so we're trying to recognize that in this fee increase. And then a green fee increase anywhere from 25 cents to $1.75. And really that has a lot to do with, our pace of play and stuff. So the highest, the $1.75 really is the lesser used 9-hole, middle of the day peak weekend time, where, that's not ideal for us to work out somebody's 9-hole golf course at the peak time. So that's where that highest rate fee comes into play, but
I don't know a lot about cover crops, but I do know a lot about tee sheet.
yes,
So.
yeah, no, please.
Whatever's on my head.
So,
Know your role all the way.
Supervisor Matera, before you, I just want to, for the rest of the committee then, we have it summarized in the Word document.
Yeah, I read all this.
Yeah, the highlighted areas, just for the rest of me, the highlighted areas in yellow are those that are changing. So you can see the specifics.
So you're gonna increase the 9-hole $1.75 because you're trying to increase 18-hole play? Is that what you're?
Well, that was one example, and I have to find actually let me scroll down to where it actually applies.
I'm just, when you say competitive, I the same thing we do with the water management, land water management, just because Washington County is paying so much for their fees, doesn't mean it give us the reason that, So.
Well,
I
can-
continue to make public health.
Well, yeah, we'll look at the historical fees, so I mean, we haven't changed stuff a lot. I mean, last year was just to reflect essentially the sales tax. That change was only to reflect the sales tax. But the specifics of where the rate increases are is on that Word document on page 100 of your packet. So page 100, you can see weekday 9 holes. You can see our 22 rate was $16.50. We're proposing just 50 cents on a weekday 9 hole. But then conversely, if you go to, let's see, I guess we only have a weekend, sorry, twilight 9 holes, summer, 75 cents is the increase. But generally speaking, the increase is yes, 25 cents to 50 cents.
And I guess what I should.
Last year, we essentially increased it, but only the amount of sales tax that we needed to recover.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why. Twilight is budget golf, because you might not get 9 holes in. So why would we increase?
Yeah, I cannot speak to the Twilight one specifically, I guess. I can.
And I'm not trying to.
No, I understand.
I'm just trying to get justification on it.
So,
Went to last month's meeting, just because the bog's charging so much, doesn't mean we can charge so much, you know?
so, to my original point, if you look at, weekend adult 9 holes, so that's our peak time. That's where it's $1.75. So yes, we are ideally trying to not take up peak time for a 9 hole versus an 18 hole. Because of our play and because of our pace of play. So it's not that we won't book them and stuff, but we're trying to balance that out in regards to both our competitors and our expenses.
It also looks at proposed rates. All it does, it creates the even dollar. If you look at, depending what they're in, everything's on an even dollar. There's no.
So I agree with that.
And that was, that's how we adjusted this year. So last year, the increase was just to account for the sales tax. This year, we're putting the rate such that when the sales tax is, an even dollar, we're building it in, if you will, but it's still got to charge separately.
That's why like the 9 hole twilight, 75 cents, or the 18 hole twilight, 50 cents. That's it.
I mean, that's part of it, yes. Yes, that's part of it. But you can see that the 18 holes in most cases, I think in all cases, is less than 9. So yes, there is a premium to try and drive people to play the 18 holes because of the use of the course.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a reason to play. It's not.
Right, no, I get it. There's, sometimes people don't have the time for an 18 hole, but at the same time, we have a demand to fill an 18 hole spot.
So you're charging them a premium because they're taking up this spot and potentially.
Potentially, at least during peak times, not so much during off times.
Okay.
And on
My first thought was, generally, speaking of broad brush, it's seniors or youth, and that's what I was like concerned.
yeah, we haven't adjusted the senior rate in a long time.
Yeah, there's $10 at practice.
So we have the competitor rate, which you've acknowledged, but then also page 102 is the annual fee rate increases that we've changed. And yeah, you can see across the board the last 2 years, but that largely had to do with the sales tax. So this year you can see highlighted in red, or sorry, the proposed for 23, you can see highlighted in red where those changes are occurring. You can compare that to adjacent golf courses as well.
What is the cost for an acre?
Let's see, proposed, I think. It is in there.
It's called Carter, I can start.
Yeah, it's, yeah, it depends on.
It's not really.
Thank you. Yeah, it's on the, it should be on the fee sheet there. Should be on the fee sheet.
It was $25.
Yeah.
We changed that.
Right, because we're hoping to drive people towards, so the The card fees, the Twilight rates and the ID card fees are all on the right-hand side, and you can see no changes in the ID card. So that also says for us, if a out-of-county resident buys an ID card, they get charged, the residence rate, if you will,
Not sure is it.
which is really the ID rate. So I think I think these are fairly nominal.
Yeah, how many rounds do you have to pay for that? It's always been, I always thought it was.
And you guys said
It's always
depends,
been.
yeah,
But I
depends
think just generally speaking,
if you're taking weekday or weekend. I think it's 3 weekend days and 4 weekdays.
yeah, that's for in my head.
Yeah, I think that's, depends if you're playing Asian bowls, what time of day. Blah, blah, blah.
Is it about the same for seniors and adults?
Oh, seniors are far less. I mean, our rate for seniors is very, very.
The card costs $25.
Yeah, the card is the same. Card is the same. Russ,
Probably doesn't take long to make up that $10.
so,
4 rounds. Yeah.
yeah,
I just want to make sure that they want to go beyond that. Well, I saw this.
so the resident
That's like
se-
6 rounds.
resident senior ID card is 2638. Proposed, which hasn't changed from last time. I know there's a lot of nuance here and it's hard, which is why, again, on 102, we gave the breakdown of the changes, but we really think that this is one, in line with our competition, in line with what we're seeing with expenses and salaries and everything else that we need to accommodate. At the course, hopefully we'll realize a little bit additional revenue with our concessionaires. But again, so much depends, so much depends on our open days, our playable days. So we can go from a really bad year, 2018, which was almost exclusively a result of weather, to a really good year. But we're trying to, if you look, I think these are still extremely good values across the board for resident cleaner. Personally, that's our intent.
Just want to, again, trust and verify the reasoning behind the reasons.
Yeah.
Public office must be affordable.
Yes.
And hats off to the crews out there, that it does a great job, the race crews do a great job, and they are phenomenal. So, I know there's a cost to that.
There is, and we have real costs and we have real escalating costs. I mean, all of our seasonals got a significant pay increase with this wage and salary study, just because they've been included in it. Our full-time, part-time also, we're needing to cover those wage increases and positions and salaries and wages. You heard before, but that is a big part of what we do. So we're trying to accommodate, a little bit of, we are also looking at our direct costs, our expenses.
I think this 2022 rounds, long summary on page 26. Seniors, around 36%.
We have huge senior league play.
And the rounds per ID card, it's like 6, seniors 16.96 for rate. Regular adults 8.44. Seniors are 32.
So I buy one every year, but I
You get the higher donation.
If you play on the weekends, you only
Yeah,
play
it's
3,000.
I'm golfing, don't worry about that.
Play on the weekends, I do have to play less. I don't know what else I can say. We did try and cover all the bases though on the,
Yeah, I just, thinking
yeah, no, I appreciate it.
the land and water, just from the views, the same.
Yep.
mindset.
We want to make a motion on this?
Just on that note, just as a recap, you guys see this every year. We do this every single year. We look at last year's, and then go through detailed ratings.
That's the one increase for the onset.
Make a motion to accept.
I'll second. Motion by Supervisor Shasta, second by Supervisor Jones. None, in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're in carry of 2022.
I understand.
Yeah, most of these are carryovers for grant related items, committed funds, for existing grants.
I would make a motion to carry.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Ross, second by Supervisor Sarah. In favor, say aye. Motion carries. Any discussion? Number one, update on Coffee Hills County multi-purpose buildings, buildings construction.
Yeah, I think I briefly described last time, but we will be stating we're doing phase 2 as a change order with our existing contractor. We feel like we're gonna get the best value that way, and so we're gonna do phase 2 as a change order. But in doing so, the graphic that was included in your packet includes kind of what's gonna be done, and also by whom. So we're actually proposing, because of cost savings and also some material savings that we have, as a result of the demolition we did at the roads. So our staff is going to be constructing everything essentially in blue. And the change order then for phase 2 will reflect, the contractor building everything that's hashed in red. That's a simplistic. But they are basically gonna be putting in, bathroom showers on that second floor. And, our planning and park staff is gonna be constructing basically the large multi-purpose room, the kitchen, and the lunch health room. And we definitely see a value in savings in that. One, because we have some of the materials, most of the materials actually, salvaged from our River Oaks, so we're not wanting to buy new materials. And two, I can have our staff work on this during off season now, which, I mean, again, they still have a lot of responsibilities, but as long as there's no snow plowing and stuff like that, they will be putting in time. And we also don't have a deadline per se, for our work, so we can use the slower times, to do the work. But overall, cost savings and a benefit at the bottom line for the cash output that we do. The contractor is very amenable to this, thinks it's a good change order. So I just wanted to show you what it is we're proposing to do, and then what the contractor would do, which would significantly lower our overall change order for phase 2. And our grant will be picking up much of the cost of phase 2 this
On this blueprint, I'm just trying to understand, is that like an ADA shower?
So everything needs to be ADA, just based on state statute and our grants. There are external entry shower rooms on the, it would be the east side, if you will.
Right, talking in the center.
Oh, those are, I think those are the wash basins, actually.
This is the.
I have to zoom in, sorry. I think those are the wash areas. Nope, yeah, you're right. Those are the internal shower room areas, yes, yep.
They show the circle because of the ADA, so.
Yep, you're right, yes, you're absolutely right, yes. And the external entry ones, are not that. Bathrooms, showers. So also, this is our commitment for the grant we accepted, as far as what's cashed in red too, so it makes a nice split of duties. So that was just heads up, and that's what's going forward and what we're proposing to do for our change order.
And then update on planning for capital projects.
Yeah, just quickly, I wanted to mention, I didn't include it in the 2022 summary, and it should have been, but we just recently completed, so if you look at your last month's packet, there's a good capture of everything we did in 22. But the one that I wanted to highlight that unfortunately inadvertently got left out of that was our construction project at Mineral Springs Creek. So we substantially completed much of the work on fish passage stream restoration on Mineral Springs Creek. I should say substantially completed phase one. So this is phase one, which is a significant part, that we did in partnership with the city. It's looking really good and, working very well, and we'll be doing restoration in spring. But that was one that wasn't in your packet from last time that I just wanted to highlight. And then we are hoping, we're just finalizing permitting, but we're hoping to start on the stormwater wetlands at Mequon within the month or so, and we'll be meeting with highway on scheduling. Hopefully they'll be able to do it for real first account work. So these are the stormwater wetlands that we plan at Mequon as part of our grant work and capital funding. And hopefully we'll be starting on that within a month or so, depending on permitting. And then lastly, we have one more winter project, I guess. We're hoping to start work. It's grant contract award dependent, but we're hoping to get that soon. And we hope to start on work on one of our impediments. Again, we already approved the grants and stuff, the funding on Sucker Brook at the lowest 10 near the confluence. We're hoping to start work on that. Hopefully still in winter, February, March timeframe, if we see that grant contract. And then lastly, I guess we're just working through all our scheduling with our conservation coordinators for 2023. And so we've been working on our AmeriCorps application and also finalizing our contracts with Westport for service. We have at least 8 weeks booked now, and hopefully additionally work that they'll be doing as we talked about. So I think that was all I wanted to highlight.
And then pursuing management, the financial information.
Yeah, nothing, I mean, 22 was a really good year for Parks and Golf Course, nothing really to speak of in 23 at this point. So we're moving along, but yeah, hopefully we'll have a good as year as 22.
Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, thanks.
Our crew is out there 3 in the morning in parks. Before you guys waking up. And I don't even know.
The next meeting was scheduled for March 2nd, and then. Motion by Supervisor Chestnut, second. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you all very much for your time.
It's been under my chair somewhere.
I'll give you